There's a certain stillness that comes after fame, a weird, almost spooky calm where the applause dies out, but the echoes are still buzzing in the back of your head. For Keith Urban, that silence didn't hit in his 20s, back when he was grinding in Nashville trying to make a name. Nah, it came decades later, when the world thought he had everything locked down. The awards, the voice, the love story that looked straight up heaven sent. Nicole Kidman, the Hollywood queen. Keith Urban, the country boy with a guitar that spilled pure honesty. From the outside, they looked untouchable. Two stars finally lined up in the same orbit. But behind that golden-eye image, something fragile was shaking. At 57, Keith Urban isn't the wide-eyed dreamer who came to America chasing songs. He's a man who's walked through fire, addiction, self-doubt, the dark side of fame, and somehow stayed standing. And when he finally spoke about his marriage to Nicole, it wasn't scandal. It wasn't betrayal. It was truth. Raw, quiet, painful truth. The kind that only comes when a man stares in the mirror long enough to stop lying to himself. He admitted that love didn't save him. It challenged him. It ripped open wounds he thought he'd buried under applause and the haze of alcohol. For years, Keith hid behind his music, using melodies like armor. But Nicole saw through all of it. She saw the fear the spotlight couldn't erase. The boy still haunted by rejection and loneliness. And when he finally said it out loud, it wasn't just about marriage. It was about survival. He said, "I almost lost her before I truly met her." A line that cuts straight through the fantasy of perfect love. Because fame never teaches you how to stay when the lights go out. Fame teaches you how to perform. Keith Urban's confession wasn't another performance. It was the courage to be human again. And that's where this story really starts. In the silence after the song ends, when the man behind the music finally whispers the truth he's been scared to sing. Before the fame, before the Grammys, before the lights carved his name into the skyline of country music, Keith Lionel Urban was just a skinny kid from Whangarei, New Zealand, clutching a guitar that looked bigger than his dreams. His dad, Robert, ran a convenience store and drank too much. His mom, Marianne, held the family together with patience and prayer. The house was small, the walls were thin, but the music, man, the music, filled the silence that poverty left behind. At 6, Keith picked up his first guitar. By 7, he was already playing chords that made grown men stop and listen. But behind those melodies was a kid starving for approval. Every note was a plea. See me. Love me. Don't leave me. His father's drinking turned too many nights into storms. Keith learned early that music could drown out shouting, that rhythm could be a safe place when love felt unpredictable. By his teens, he was playing bars, his small hands moving across the strings like someone who knew there was no plan B. School didn't matter. The stage did. It was the one place he could reinvent himself. But applause was only a temporary fix. When the crowd faded, the loneliness crept back in, whispering that no matter how loud he played, silence always came next. He dreamed of Nashville, the holy land of country legends. Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, men who sang about pain and turned it into poetry. That's what Keith wanted, to turn childhood chaos into something beautiful. But Nashville didn't roll out the red carpet for him. It was cold, competitive, brutal, rejection after rejection. His accent was weird. His look too polished. His songs too honest. Executives wanted formulas. Keith offered confession. Then came the dark years. Nights bleeding into mornings. The bottle becoming his most loyal friend. Success moved slow. Addiction showed up fast. Fame didn't make him feel alive. It made him disappear in HD. Every hit song became a mask. Every concert a distraction from the ache inside him. Still, the guitar never left his side. That instrument, basically an extension of his soul, kept him alive. It carried him from dive bars to arenas, from nobody to almost legend. Yet standing on stage, staring at screaming crowds, one question haunted him. If they love my music, will they ever love the man behind it? That question followed him straight into marriage. The question that could either save him or wreck him. Keith Urban's rise wasn't a straight climb. It was a spiral, a wild dance between brilliance and self-destruction. Nashville was a battlefield. Every bar packed with someone louder, better, hungrier. But Keith had something most didn't. Pain wrapped in melody. His songs weren't written for charts. They were written to survive. By the late 1990s, the kid from New Zealand was one of country music's brightest flames. The ranch cracked doors open. His solo career kicked them down. Somebody Like You. You'll Think of Me. These songs didn't just play. They lived inside people. But every hit had a price. The bigger the fame, the more the man disappeared. He'd leave the stage drowning in applause and walk into dressing rooms soaked in silence. Outside was chaos. Inside was empty. That's when the bottle called him back. No judgment. No rules. Cocaine followed, selling him fake control. Keith once said he didn't drink to feel good. He drank to feel nothing. Fame does that. It gives you everything, then quietly collects your soul in installments. On the surface, he was flawless. Golden voice. Perfect smile. Smooth interviews. Behind the scenes, friends whispered about mood swings, disappearances, anger. Some nights, he vanished before shows, alone in hotel rooms, chasing peace at the bottom of a bottle. Then came the crash. Waking up alone, surrounded by empties, with no memory of how he got there. Alive, but hollow. He later said that was the night he watched himself die in slow motion. When Nicole Kidman walked into his life, he was right on that edge. To the world, she was the movie star who could fix him. To Keith, she was a mirror showing everything he'd been dodging. Their love started like a movie, beautiful, cinematic, tabloid-ready. But underneath were two broken people trying to save each other. At first, she grounded him, gave him calm when the world demanded chaos. But addiction doesn't care about love. It feeds on it. Less than 4 months after their wedding, Nicole staged an intervention. She put him in a car and drove him to rehab herself. I needed to find myself before I could be a husband, he later admitted. That moment didn't magically fix everything. It started a brutal rebirth. He didn't walk out of rehab perfect. He walked out scared, shaking, humbled, but alive. For the first time, he understood fame was never his savior. Love wasn't easy. Recovery wasn't pretty. But it was real. Fame made him a legend. Sobriety had to make him a man. Today, Keith doesn't call his marriage a fairy tale. He calls it a rescue mission. Not because Nicole saved him like a movie plot, but because she didn't walk away when he was drowning in his own success. She stayed when she could have left, he once said, eyes heavy with guilt and gratitude. That's where the real truth lives. Behind closed doors. Away from cameras. Where love loses its shine and faces its scars. After rehab, Keith came home not as the man Nicole married, but as someone rebuilding from ashes. Trust wasn't instant. It was earned daily. There were relapses, not drugs, but emotions. Shame, fear, anger. He'd learned to perform, not to feel. Now he had to learn the hardest thing, being still. Nicole carried her own weight too. Failed loves, miscarriages, media dissecting her every breath. Together, they weren't perfect. They were real. They built a life in Tennessee, far from red carpets. A quiet place where their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, could grow without flashes. Keith called it a fortress of stillness. He learned to wake up early, make breakfast, walk barefoot in the grass. Simplicity wasn't failure anymore. It was freedom. Nicole gave him structure, rhythm, faith. She never asked for perfection, just presence. In return, he gave honesty, the thing that once scared him most. His music changed. Softer, deeper. Blue Ain't Your Color wasn't just heartbreak. It was empathy, choosing to stay with someone else's pain. The road stayed rough. Fame never sleeps. Neither does the past. Keith talked about nights waking up in fear, worried the old version of him might come back. Addiction never leaves, he said. It just waits. That's when Nicole would sit beside him, hand on his chest, whispering, "You're here. You're home." Love wasn't fireworks. It was holding each other through silence. The tabloids tried to tear them apart. Rumors, drama, fake stories. None of it stuck. Not because they were immune, but because they protected their truth. We don't post our love, Keith joked. We live it. And maybe that's the real win. Not the awards. Not the headlines. But the quiet victory of a man who once sang to escape noise and finally found peace in the sound of his own heartbeat next to hers. He doesn't write songs to be remembered anymore. He writes them to stay alive. Redemption, Keith Urban later said, isn't a moment. It's a discipline. A daily choice, even when nobody's watching. For him, that means waking up every day and facing the ghosts, the hunger for approval, the fear of being forgotten, the ache of perfection. Fame might have forgiven him, His soul took longer. When he returned to touring, the cheers were louder than ever. Fans screamed his name. But Keith knew applause was dangerous. It can make you feel untouchable. This time, he stayed grounded. He promised Nicole and his daughters the stage would never come before home. "I used to chase the next song," he said. "Now I chase the next breakfast with my kids." Still, the battle never really ended. In interviews, Keith spoke straight up about the temptations that never fully disappeared. The long nights on the road, the exhaustion, the loneliness dressed up as freedom. Sobriety, he said, isn't a destination. It's a road that never stops testing your resolve, no breaks. He carried a small reminder with him wherever he went. A photo of Nicole and their daughters taped inside his guitar case. "They are my compass," he said. "When I play, I remember who I'm playing for." Even so, the world kept pulling at him. The demands of the music industry, the endless tours, the interviews that poked and prodded at his marriage, all of it threatened the fragile peace he had built. Nicole's career was no quieter. Between award shows, film sets, and public scrutiny, their lives became a balancing act on a knife's edge. They made a pact early on. 2 weeks apart, no more. No matter where in the world they were, they would find each other. Sometimes it meant red-eye flights and sleepless nights. But it also meant survival. And survival for Keith meant honesty. He stopped pretending to be the flawless country hero. He began talking about his mental health, his insecurities, his past mistakes, no filter. In doing so, he unknowingly became a lifeline for countless other fans who saw their own brokenness reflected in his recovery. One night after a concert, a young man handed Keith a letter. It read, "Your music stopped me from ending my life. You made me believe I could start over." Keith kept that letter folded in his wallet for years. "That's the real hit," he said. "That's the one that matters." But redemption always comes with a price. For Keith, that price was vulnerability. He could no longer hide behind charm or melody. Every lyric he wrote now came from scar tissue. And though he sang of hope, his voice often carried the ache of someone still wrestling with shadows. "You don't cure pain," he said in a quiet moment. "You learn to carry it without letting it crush you." At 57, the man who once chased stardom now chases silence, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. His fame is still there, but it no longer owns him. His marriage stands not because it's easy, but because both of them learned that love is not the absence of struggle, it's the decision to stay through it. And maybe that's what he finally meant when he admitted the truth about his marriage. That redemption is not a fairy tale ending, but a lifelong choice, one made every day between the noise of the crowd and the whisper of the heart. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest storms. For Keith Urban, age 57 isn't just a number. It's a mirror. It reflects every scar, every lyric, every second chance he was ever given. The wild energy that once burned through his veins has cooled, replaced by something steadier, a deep gratitude that feels almost sacred. "I'm not chasing the next thing anymore," he said in a recent interview. "I'm learning to just be here, to breathe." These days, his fame looks different. The crowds are still there, but the spotlight doesn't blind him anymore. He walks onto the stage with calm confidence, guitar in hand, not to prove anything, but to share. His songs have evolved from youthful longing to mature truth. Wild Hearts, Polaroid, and God Whispered Your Name aren't just hits. They're proof of endurance, reflections of a man who faced the edge and came back. His fans feel it too, that subtle shift from rock star to storyteller who's finally at peace with his own story. At home in Nashville, the life he and Nicole built has become the core of everything he does. They no longer live for premieres or gossip. Their happiness is in the quiet moments, cooking dinner, sitting on the porch while their daughters laugh in the backyard, watching the sunset melt into the Tennessee sky. "I don't need chaos anymore," Keith said softly. Peace is louder than applause. But even peace, he knows, is fragile. The music world can be ruthless, especially for artists aging in a youth-obsessed industry. The same fame that once crowned him could easily move on without him. He doesn't fear irrelevance. He's seen what happens when you let the world decide your worth. He's learned that legacy isn't what people say when you're gone. It's what you build in the silence when no one's watching. He reflects often on the years he lost to addiction, the apologies he had to make, the trust he had to rebuild. And when asked if he would change anything, his answer is always the same. No, because the cracks are where the light came in. That line has become his personal truth. The pain was never his punishment. It was his teacher. For Keith Urban, success is simple now. It's not how many albums he sells, but how deeply he connects. It's not the size of the crowd, but the look in his daughter's eyes when they hear him sing. The man who once feared being alone now values solitude. The artist who once needed validation now writes for love, not legacy. And as for Nicole, she remains his compass. Their marriage, once ripped apart by tabloids, has grown into a partnership built on grace. They've weathered more storms than most couples ever will. But through every season, they've kept one promise unbroken, to choose each other, even on the days when love feels like work. She's my home, Keith said simply. The rest is just weather. Now when he stands on stage, looking out at a sea of lights, he smiles differently. Not like a man performing, but like a man finally free. Because somewhere between the music and the silence, between the mistakes and the miracles, Keith Urban found the one thing fame could never give him: peace. There comes a moment in every artist's life when the noise fades and the truth buried under applause starts to speak. For Keith Urban, that moment has arrived. The man who once sang of longing and redemption now speaks of peace. Not the kind sold on records or handed out with awards, but the quiet kind earned through years of falling down and getting back up. When asked recently what he wanted to be remembered for, he paused for a long time before saying softly, "For being honest." Finally, honesty, the piece that was missing all along. For decades, Keith built his world on the edge of illusion. The smiling star, the charming husband, the man who made pain sound poetic. But behind the music, he was still learning how to love without losing himself. It took 57 years for him to realize that truth isn't the absence of flaws, it's the courage to keep showing up with them. And that may be his greatest legacy, proof that broken things can still make beautiful sounds. His marriage to Nicole Kidman has become a symbol not of perfection, but of persistence. In a world where celebrity unions fall apart like cheap stage props, theirs has endured not because it's immune to cracks, but because they learned how to fix them. He once said, "Nicole taught me that love isn't fireworks. It's the daily choosing, even when it's hard." That truth cuts deeper than fame. Real love doesn't need spectacle. It needs sincerity. Keith's legacy also lives in his songs. Not just in the melodies, but in the silence between the notes, the pauses heavy with confession. Parallel Line isn't just a love song. It's a prayer. Break on Me isn't about heartbreak. It's about surrender. Through them, he's drawn a map for survival for anyone who's ever lost themselves and fought their way back. Every lyric is a breadcrumb leading to the man he was and the man he's still becoming. In the twilight of his career, Keith Urban isn't chasing trends or headlines. He's content sitting on his porch with a guitar. His daughter's nearby, Nicole reading by the window. Sometimes he writes. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he just listens to the cicadas, the wind, the faint echo of a life that almost went another way. And in that stillness, he smiles, knowing his greatest song was never recorded. It was lived. Even now, he carries one last confession. Fame never healed him, but love did. For years, he said, I thought music was my salvation, but it was just the language my soul used to beg for peace. Nicole gave me that peace. My daughters gave me that purpose. Without them, I would have written my last song a long time ago. It's a confession that strips away the legend and leaves only the man, flawed, fragile, grateful. He no longer hides behind rhythm or rhyme. He's found redemption not in perfection, but in endurance, in choosing to keep playing, keep loving, keep believing that even broken strings can still carry a melody. And so at 57, Keith Urban finally tells the truth. The real story was never about fame or fortune, but about forgiveness, of himself, of his past, and of the silence that once scared him. He no longer needs to perform for the world. He plays for the few who matter most, and for the quiet peace that has finally become his home. Because in the end, the greatest song he ever wrote wasn't for radio or charts. It was for love, and it will echo long after the last note fades.